He's been. Okay, there it is. Good morning and welcome, everyone. This is our first committee of the whole meeting with our new council. It is November the 12th, and I do call this meeting to order, and it is 8:30 exactly. I'll leave it to Mayor McKay to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. I would like to acknowledge Wolfville is situated in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, and as such, ask that we conduct our business with the 7 sacred teachings in mind: truth, honesty, love, courage, respect, wisdom, and humility.
Thank you, Mayor McKay. Can I ask you for a motion to approve the agenda as circulated?
Yes, I would move that the agenda be circulated as it is.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Council Parmenter, seconder. Are there any additions or changes besides the break at 10 o'clock? No? CAO? No. Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the agenda circulated? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Mayor McKay, can I ask you to move the committee of the whole minutes on September the 10th?
Aye. I would move that the minutes of September 10th, 2024 committee of the whole meeting be approved as circulated.
And can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Councillor Butler, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Oh, sorry, are there any errors or omissions on that? Does anybody see? No? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Also, can you do the committee of the whole in camera?
Certainly. I would move that the minutes of September 10th, 2024 committee of the whole in camera meetings be approved as circulated.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Elliott? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And those are carried. Acadia. Thank you. I'm just going to give a minute just for those watching in the audience. There's some Acadia ASU students coming in, so welcome to the chambers. I'll just let you get settled before the next presentation.
It's okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Riel? Oh, we're here. We're all good, David?
Hello.
Okay, thank you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. Good morning, Riel.
Good morning.
It's nice for you to be here. So let me just, you are with the Atlantic Outreach Biologist, and you're going to be doing a presentation for us this morning. So it's Riel Hogue. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Hogue, I'm sorry. I knew I wasn't going to say it correctly. So please go ahead, Riel, and welcome this morning.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen just a second. Oh, switch the view. Oops, not that one. Wait, which screen do you guys see? Do you see presenter view or do you see the presentation itself?
How Wolfville can keep helping our chimney swifts.
Okay, and you don't see a notes panel on the side or the next slide previews or anything?
No.
Okay, excellent. That's what I wanted. Okay, so thank you all so much for having me today. My name is Riel Hogue, and I work at Birds Canada. I'm here today because the chimney swifts in Wolfville are well known and celebrated, and Wolfville has a history of taking conservation action for these special birds. And I'll talk to you today about how the town of Wolfville can continue to support them. So, as I said, I work for Birds Canada. We're a national nonprofit bird conservation organization, and our mission is to drive action to increase the understanding, appreciation, and conservation of birds in Canada. A little background about chimney swifts, in case you're not familiar, they're a little gray-brown birds. They're described as looking like a cigar with wings. They're long-distance migrants. They spend their winters in South America, and they're here in Wolfville from about May through September. They can't perch or stand like other birds, so you can see that picture at the bottom of a chimney swift and a European starling. Chimney swifts instead rest by clinging to rough vertical surfaces, usually inside of a cavity like a chimney, or historically a large hollow tree or cave. Chimney swifts are aerial insectivores, which means that they feed on flying insects, and each chimney swift can eat upwards of 1,000 insects per day. They use brick chimneys for nesting and roosting. And roosting, I just think of it as resting. It's when groups of birds gather to rest overnight or during poor weather, and you see big groups of them during migration. And Wolfville's famous for them throughout the spring and summer. So I mentioned the chimney swifts are aerial insectivores, and this group of birds have faced a 43% decline in Canada since 1970. Chimney swifts themselves have faced a harsher decline of about 90% in that time. Federally, they're listed as threatened, and in Nova Scotia, they're listed as endangered. And reasons for this are that insect populations are declining, which impacts the entire group of aerial insectivores, and chimney swifts themselves are losing their artificial habitat like chimneys as they're capped, metal-lined, or destroyed, and they don't have much old growth forest that would support these large hollow trees that would have spaces inside for them to use to return to. And just according to the Nova Scotia Nature Trust, less than 1% of Nova Scotian forests are over 100 years old, let alone old growth. So here's a map of all of our known chimney swift sites in the Maritimes. So Birds Canada has been monitoring and recording nest and roost sites for over a decade. Through the Swift Watch program. These are just the sites we know about, and there's certainly more out there waiting to be discovered and protected. So this map highlights partially the importance of the Annapolis Valley as a hotspot for chimney swifts, and Wolfville plays an incredible role as a host town. Just as an aside, at every presentation I've given about chimney swifts, people stop to tell me stories of watching the swifts in Wolfville, and they mention the chimney on Front Street. So here are the sites that we know about in Wolfville. So again, roosts are what we call sites where the swifts gather, and nests are usually only used by a nesting pair, so only 2 birds. Wolfville has 2 known roost sites, the Roby Tufts Nature Center on Front Street and a chimney at University Hall on the Acadia University campus. In addition, we know about 10 nest sites. At least 1 has been capped, and there might be 2 more, but that requires some further investigation. And then there is the Roby Tufts Nature Center. It's a well-known roost in Wolfville. Until recently, the chimney has been used by swifts at least since the 1970s. It was originally a dairy processing plant, but the building was demolished and the chimney was reinforced and kept for chimney swifts. This location has been well advocated for and very well monitored and stewarded by members of the Blomidon Naturalist Society, and especially the late Jim Wolford. This freestanding chimney is just an example of a conservation success story and an amazing collaborative effort with the town of Wolfville. So I plotted the highest roost counts from every year, which we have data. So this is when we count the number of chimney swifts going into a chimney in the spring. So I looked at University Hall and the Roby Tufts Center. Just a quick note that University Hall wasn't regularly monitored until about 2018. So it doesn't mean there weren't swifts using it prior to that. Almost 0 swifts have been seen using the Roby Tufts Center since about 2019. But you can see that it served as an important site for many, many years. We don't know for sure why they've made the switch to University Hall and aren't using the Roby Tufts Center, but we think it may be due to the condition of the chimney. Even though they have University Hall to go to, it's important to have multiple sites for chimney swifts to use throughout their landscape because they use a network of chimneys throughout migration and breeding. And as I mentioned, chimneys are being lost. So we have 3 kind of key points about the Roby Tufts Center. The chimney may be in need of repair. There's mortar missing in several places, but we'll need a professional that knows about chimneys to look at it. I've given presentations in Wolfville the last few years, and I've heard some concern from locals about lights in the area that could be disturbing the swifts that may warrant some further investigation. And there could be further issues with the chimney, like maybe it needs to be cleaned out, but we can't know for sure without checking. And although they haven't been seen roosting in the chimney in big groups, it's possible that they've been nesting. So it would be nice to be able to look inside to see if there's any recent evidence of nests. So what we're asking is to work together, Birds Canada and the town of Wolfville. So first, that we work together to investigate and repair the Roby Tough Center. We'd be happy to work together to help this process along, and there's a fund that can possibly support chimney repair costs that I'll touch on later. Second, we have a list of known chimney swift sites, as I've shown you, that other municipalities have incorporated into their planning, and permitting systems. If renovation work is to be done on structures that have housed swifts, Birds Canada is able to share information on stewardship recommendations and legal requirements as well. Just as an example, chimney alterations are not legally allowed for occupied or recently occupied chimneys because they're considered to be chimney swift habitat. Third, we're asking that the town of Wolfville share stewardship information with residents. So we have physical pamphlets we can share. We have pre-made social media posts. And we host events to educate the public and celebrate chimney swifts and other birds that we could collaborate on or could be shared. Fourth, just looking longer term, Birds Canada would be happy to support and help develop or review policies that protect wetlands and mature forest habitat that are important for chimney swifts and their insect prey. Birds Canada can provide scientific advice on future policies related to birds, conservation, and nature, and not just chimney swifts. And finally, we'd like to partner on a Swift night out for the public and town staff and councillors to see and learn about chimney swifts. Wendy attended one this past spring, and it was awesome to get to talk to her. And there's some ways you may already be helping or that chimney swifts can kind of help you. So it's just kind of a list of benefits here. So chimney swifts primarily use urban habitat for nesting and roosting. Municipalities are well placed to positively influence chimney swift conservation, and there may already be policies and bylaws in place that help swifts and other species at risk. Healthy aerial insectivore populations like chimney swifts provide ecological goods and services through insect population control. They're out there all day in the spring and summer eating lots of insects around the town. Chimney swift roosts draw tourists to the downtown core. I mean, Wolfville is the best example of this that I know about. Like I said, people tell me about this at presentations I'm giving elsewhere. And people are thinking about conservation. So stewardship of chimney swifts and other species at risk demonstrates the town's commitment to sustainability goals, environmental stewardship, and it would help, like helping chimney swifts helps Wolfville meet sustainability or biodiversity targets and sheds a positive light. Just a super quick version of what Birds Canada does for chimney swifts. So besides coordinating a large volunteer monitoring program in the Maritimes, we support landowners who steward chimney swifts. We have a swift-friendly property sign program. That's what that big picture is on the right there. We also conduct outreach to increase public awareness about chimney swifts, so educational events, things like that, and also directly speaking to landowners. We also do our best to prevent chimneys from being lost. If we know about them before they're lost, then we can help to protect them. We're also nationally recognized experts on monitoring, stewardship, and best management practices for conserving chimney swifts and other birds, so we can help to navigate situations that threaten them. And I mentioned that we had some funding to support repair of chimneys. So we have the Chimney Swift Fund. It supports up to 50% of the repair or uncapping of a chimney. The costs are up to 1-to-1 matched with an applicant for structures that are known to either currently be used by swifts or have been recently used by swifts. And so just for example, with the Roby Tufts Nature Center being such an important site, it would be a very likely candidate for this fund. And I circulated information about this already, so you can take a look or feel free to reach out with any questions about this fund. And that's it for me. So thank you for your time. This is my email and the Birds Canada website and social media below. And I'll
Thank
stop.
you, Riel, for the presentation. I want to open it up to the floor if any members have any questions for Riel. Put your light on. Howard?
Hi, Riel. It's Howard Williams here. Are you approaching the university as well?
Yes, we've approached them about, they have a site that's actually at risk of being demolished. So we're working with them to prevent that from happening and find alternate solutions. It's a nesting site there. So we've been speaking to them about that. Yes.
Are you going to Bridgetown?
For what they're
There are chimneys there.
Yep, yeah, we're we collaborate with people in all of these communities. This is more so just the ask for Wolfville today. I didn't have time to cover all of that, but yeah, we did an event in Bridgetown last year actually and invited the local councillors.
Councilor Elliott?
Thanks very much, Riel. I attended your talk back in the summer, and do you have any kind of a count as to how many people came out that night to show their interest?
Oh, I think there were between 30 and 40 people at the event this year. I think we had a bit of a rainy year this time, didn't we? So there were a little bit fewer. I've had anywhere from
Well,
20 at my
yeah.
it's in Wolfville. Yeah, in the past 2 or 3 years in collaboration with the Blomidon Naturalist Society.
Yeah, I don't think it was outright raining, but it was threatening.
Actually, it was a lovely night.
Yeah.
Up at the university, and I would say there was at least 50 people there, many of them armed with deck chairs, just pointing their gaze up to the chimney. And there were roughly 200 that night.
Yes, and we had lots of people stop by that were curious why we were gathered there staring up at the sky.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you. Howard, do you have another question? If not, you can just turn your light off. Thank you. Are there any more questions from council? Councillor Van Niekerk?
Thanks so much, Riel, for the presentation. I remember being a young kid here, going to the building before it was torn down to watch the Swifts go down that chimney. But I was just wondering if there's a time frame that you mark chimneys kind of, or you deem them to be out of service, so to speak. Like if you haven't seen Swifts go into a chimney for X number of years, or if there's some kind of standard for that.
Right. So that's a great question. So they need to have proven absence for 3 years to no longer be considered critical habitat for chimney swifts. But again, those need to be monitored sites. So the Roby Tufts Center has been well monitored, and we haven't been seeing swifts using it, unfortunately, since I think I said 2018, 2019-ish. And that's part of why I'd like to look inside for evidence of nests. So that would be evidence that they've still been using it. We haven't had folks monitoring for nests later in the summer.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? I don't see any more questions. Is it okay that I ask a question here? Okay, just want to make sure. Okay. Thanks again, Riel. I just want to, when we're doing the maintenance on the chimney, or is when you fix it, will they come back? Like, will they automatically, these swifts automatically come back? Because you said 2018 and 19. How do we know that?
They're animals. We don't know for sure that they will come back right away. But it's about having a site that we know that they've used it in the past. We don't know why they've stopped using it. We suspect it could be the condition. It could be it needs to be cleaned out. We don't really know. But I think it would be a shame to lose that site. And so I think we should be doing everything we can to try and make it a good home again for chimney swifts. And even if it's used by nesting pairs for a few years, maybe they'll switch from University Hall in 5 years' time. It's just, we don't know for sure if they will come back or when they will. But if it's not available, then they won't.
Thank you. Council Promoter?
So how many sites are on Acadia? There's U-Haul. Is there another site as well that's in threat of being torn down? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so University Hall's not at risk of being torn down as far as I'm aware. There's they're putting in a new nursing building, and there's a building that's slated to be torn down to make way for that. So we're trying to work on a solution that is best for everyone in the Swifts, and maybe in the future that is building a different chimney somewhere else, or we don't know what the solution is there, but there is one chimney that's at risk. I see on my map at least 3 others that are on the Acadia University campus, though. And I'm sure there are more throughout Wolfville and at Acadia as well. We don't necessarily know about all of them. We rely on volunteers and public reporting them.
Mayor McKay, sorry about that.
That's okay. So just not necessarily a question for Riel, but what would next steps be if council wanted to look at the chimney and the funding and all of that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think the next step is having some more discussions. Getting a mason to inspect the chimney would be the first step. I mean, just walking by, I'm not a mason, so I don't know what repairs it would need, but I have noticed mortar falling out. But having a professional look at the chimney would be the first step. And then if you're interested in pursuing repairs, there's the Chimney Swift Fund. So you'd need quotes from the mason on what needs to be done and how much that would cost. And then you can go to the Chimney Swift Fund. We have a team of us that work on it, and they will provide some more next steps. So there may also be species at risk permits that are needed for the province and the federal government. And work also on the chimney has to happen outside of when the chimney swifts are here. So they're here throughout about May through September. So physical work on the chimney would have to happen outside of that time. So from September through to about April is the working window to avoid disturbing them if they do come back.
Yeah. So Riel, this is very, very timely is what you're saying. Not just in terms of town budgeting, but also in terms of applying for the fund and getting onto this ASAP. So thank you for coming
Yeah.
electronically.
Thank you for having me. And I went to Acadia. I was in Wolfville for many years. So this is also a special place in my heart besides just being bird related.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure there's no more questions before we move on.
Had one
Oh, sorry.
thing.
Go ahead,
Sorry, just
Councillor
wanted
Van
to
Niekerk.
be clear on something. So would you do kind of an investigation in terms of what's happening inside the chimney before looking at getting a mason in to understand the repairs? Like, would we want to look and see if there's nests inside before we have someone come and look at repair? I'm just wondering when that would happen or who would do that.
I could come down if there's somebody available to open up the chimney and take a look inside. I can come down and look whenever. I'm just outside of Truro, so I just need, a day's notice or so, and I can come down and look.
Okay.
Mayor McKay.
So can we give direction to staff to work with Riel if it was the will of council to say, come and take a look? That's okay. So I would ask if that was the will of council during this conversation.
Mayor McKay, are you asking that there be a motion today?
No, not necessarily a motion, but just if we had direction, if we had consensus around direction and that looking into it, if the CAO would organize that.
So am I looking around at council? Do we want to give direction to the CAO to look into that? Okay, I'm hearing consensus on that.
So you would need a boom truck to get up and do that though, right, Riel?
I think there's an access point at the bottom, isn't there? I could just poke my head inside. If a boom truck is needed, then that I'm not sure about that part. I thought I could look inside from the bottom, but if a boom truck's needed, then yeah, we'll need to discuss this further.
we know.
Yeah, we can figure out those logistics.
So CAO, do we have everything that we need?
I do.
Okay, and any more questions? Looking around the table? Lights are going on after. Okay, thank you so much, Ariel, and you're welcome to stay, but we're going to be moving on to other stuff. So I do appreciate your time and coming here and informing the council. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having. me. Bye.
Right. So that moves us to public input. I do see some people in the audience. I'm not sure if there's anybody online, but if anybody would like to come up for public input, there is a 5-minute time limit. Our CAO Glenn will sort of give you a notification when you're getting close to that time. So if you want to come up, just state your name and go for it. Okay.
Morning. I'm on Winnipeg time, so I appreciate that all of you are here and appreciate the opportunity to speak. Mayor Mackay and council, my name is Mary Norton. I'm a resident of Wolfville and I rent an office in the downtown for my private practice. I have read the updated report on the encampment in Roby Tufts Park, and I've come to speak in that regard. I have a few suggestions to make to council as well. Last fall, I and others became aware that people were living without shelter behind the library. Since then, a committee of people have provided social and material support as possible, and we've met regularly to plan and advocate for more appropriate housing for these residents in our town. I appreciate that town staff have continued to check on the residents, that there have been consultations with housing advocates and agency staff, and that the visitor center has been available for CMHA staff to meet with residents about coordinated access. And I understand from meeting with the staff there that some people have taken advantage of that. I and others have heard presentations from CMHA and from Open Arms about what their staff are doing to address housing initiatives and to coordinate them. And I'm aware that staff are working very diligently and that they are working way over capacity. Meanwhile, 6 or more people are living unhoused next to the library and in other parts of Wolfville. And as we all know, winter is around the corner. In consultation with other concerned residents, I offer the following for your consideration, and excuse me. There is an urgent need for emergency short-term transitional housing in Wolfville. A possibility is to erect winterized trailers with security and social support, and presentations to that effect have been offered before. People currently living in tents can move into those temporary shelters until they can access more appropriate housing. Funding for such shelters would be contingent on having land for the shelters to be located. Community volunteers are inquiring about possibilities to use private land in Wolfville. If and when land is available, could the town expedite processes to approve the land for emergency shelter use and provide access for electricity and related resources? That's my first suggestion. Number 2, there is a need for a housing navigator to work in Wolfville with Wolfville residents who are unhoused or are facing risk of loss of housing. A navigator would connect with people, build relationships, which is essential to helping people move into more appropriate shelters, and provide access to other connections and access to other resources. Local volunteers are exploring possibilities for funding, staffing, and managing a navigator position. And we hope that the town can provide meeting space, as you have been, and liaison to support a navigator. Third, there is a need to coordinate communication and actions to provide emergency housing in Wolfville. I think we're all aware of that. A suggestion is that the town strike an emergency shelter and housing working group to help meet this need. This group could include town staff, local volunteers, and possibly people from agencies. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and to offer some possibilities for your consideration. I need to leave shortly to attend to my work responsibilities, but I hope to return later in the morning. Thank you very much. There's the document.
Thank you, Mary. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak?
Hello, my name's Andrea Lynn, and you probably know why I'm here, because I've been quite vocal and visible. It's about IntelliVote. There's a Valley group that's been meeting since we realized that Wolfville and several other places are totally 100% digital with their elections, their municipal elections. And we have a couple of lawyers on the team. And it's pretty clear that this council and other councils, you're not alone, have actually broken several laws. In January, were you here in January, and were you on the council in January, or what was it Una? Okay, so Una had left. Yeah, okay, just wanted to check that out. You were given a template, I understand, and councils were given different, or maybe the same template, but were permitted to write their own bylaw to override the Nova Scotia statutes. And you did that, definitely, because you voted for something that would 100% replace the paper ballot. So no doubt whatsoever, the councils are guilty of something. I have to back up a bit because we probably shouldn't be having this next election either. We're letting it go that, okay, you're in. Whether you're tweaked in or you're really in, IntelliVote was in its third phase, third time of bankruptcy, and was, rescued by our governments to do this election. Wolfville could have maybe hired their own private company for a little place. Anyway, that's another thing. We were also under emergency legislation, which passed the year before in June at the Avon River at the Causeway with John Lohr, Melissa Sheaf Richards, and Tim Houston. That puts the corporations around you in a position of being in war measure. By now you ought to know what that means. So I'm saying to you, I feel sorry for you. People weren't here yet, but you'll be involved hopefully in a process to write this, to re-engineer this, to walk it back. That would be my hope. And in these letters are just for just our process of finding things out. It's just to give you an idea of what we've gone through so far. But people are working the whole valley, okay? I'm just putting you on notice that we would really like the council to meet with a group of citizens. It may take a long time. This may require legislation to overcome these crimes that are happening. What can I say? The fox is in charge of the hen house. Okay? We have corporations for almost over 30 years, and corporations have a different set of laws than the laws that governed civil society. Pardon? Okay. I can give a copy to Laura. She's one of the heroes in the script. She saved me from a compliancy officer. Anyway, I'm not going to say any more. I hope that I'm not being too harsh. I want you to know the seriousness of this and the seriousness that lies behind it. It's not that our legislation, our Municipal Elections Act hasn't been being tampered with for a while now to allow it to line up with this coup, okay? Anyway, I thank you. And I hope that we could have a spot in your next council meeting to discuss further, question, answer. 15 minutes would be great. More if you want.
Sorry, ma'am, your time is up.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. This video, or how do I- there's no. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak?
Right on. Welcome, good morning. My name is Franklin Wilmot. I live on 20 Willow Avenue, Wolfville. I read the CAO report, which was quite comprehensive, thorough. And I want to comment on some implications of that report. Wolfville is doing many mighty things, very busy, and the report very clearly points to the demands, the increasing demands on staff time and management time. I think as more and more projects come online, more and more initiatives come online, you know, you have the Robie Tufts encampment, you have new projects on the East End, 292's coming online, Devour is still underway, etc. A new town hall coming. So there will be a need for additional staff. It's quite obvious in the near future as more and more of these projects come online, the demands on staff. So my question or the implication here is that there needs to be funding to accommodate the increase in staff that will be needed. And thinking about that, it's obvious that there are a number of opportunities that are being missed by the town for whatever reason. They're being missed by a town, and these opportunities, I would ask that they be reviewed as a source of income or a reimbursement of expenses that the town has incurred, the reimbursement of those, so that there would be funds available for new staff or new projects, whether it be whatever it be. So that essentially is my ask, that town would pursue reimbursement of taxpayers' money, which has already been spent or granted, that they would be, and which is the town is entitled to reclaim these expenses and grants, that the town would pursue under the entitlement of the various agreements to have that money back into their coffers. So that's the ask, but just to give you a few examples. 292, the infamous 292. For example, as we stand, the developer is using parking places. And I'm surprised that they have actually taken so few. But nevertheless, there are 16 parking places that are no longer in use by the town. And that seems to be just simply given to them, the use of town property with no revenue. That could be a rental. We figure out how to charge whatever you need to charge. So many parking places for 500 days or whatever, figure it out. That's a source of revenue. So the parking, 292. The town spent approximately $10,000 for architectural renderings. Yes, the town asked for those renderings because it needed to see what the building would look like in line of approving the agreement. So those money should be reimbursed. We spent that money. The town has spent that money. That money should be reimbursed from the developer. So those are sources of income that are slipping through the cracks. Devour, another example. Those two $50,000 tranches. The first $50,000 tranche was paid, and it was if a particular requirement wasn't met by a specified date,
1 minute remaining, sir.
that 50,000, the wording of the agreement says that Devour must return that amount. It's not a matter if it's even asking for it. It's automatically. There's another $50,000 that could have come into the coffers. The second tranche, same thing, should never have been paid, or if it has been paid, it should now be reimbursed. So there's $120,000, just like that. That could be in the town coffers for various future projects, future staff, future expenses. So the ask is, will the town pursue more diligently the recovery of expenses and grant monies, which we are entitled to have? That's a simple ask. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll ask again, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? And just checking online, Laura or Dave, if there's anyone online? No, no one online. Okay. That would be it for public input. Thank you. So we will move on to committee reports. Audit, Councillor Butler, is there anything to add to that?
As submitted.
As submitted, okay. Any questions? Nope, okay. Move on to planning advisory. I believe that was Isabel's report. And RCMP, I believe, was also Isabel's. So we'll move on to source water protection. Council Promoter, is there anything to add?
As submitted.
As submitted. Any questions from council? Nope, okay. We'll move on to external reports. Kings Point to Point, Councillor Butler.
As submitted.
As submitted. Any questions to Councillor Butler? Nope. Move on to business development corporations. Mayor McKay, give you a verbal report.
Yeah, that meeting happened right before election time, so the meeting was very informal. Lots of discussions on preparing for Devour and Nova Scotia Music Week, and then a tour of Devour was had, but the discussion up till that point was fairly informal. And then I actually had to leave, but the rest of the committee went to the Devour site and visited their space before Devour opened.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to our CA report. I'll hand that over to Glenn.
Thank you very much, Chair. First, on behalf of staff, I'd like to again welcome this new council and congratulate you all on your election just a short time ago. Excuse me. I think I speak for all staff and I say we're very much looking forward to working with you folks over the course of the next 4 years. So I'll speak to a couple of items in the CAO report, but it is largely as submitted. Just to highlight a couple of key points, staff executed a successful election with 49.1% participation rate this past municipal election. That is, for municipal elections, that is that's a very good and respectable participation rate for when it comes to municipal elections. Oftentimes you'll see those rates in the low 40s or in the high 30s, or depending on what kind of situation exists in the municipality, even less than that. So that's kudos to everyone involved from the staff, and kudos to Laura and as our returning officer and her staff that were involved, and also all of you as candidates. On the engineering and public works side, just a couple of key pieces. Staff are continuing with maintenance activities, which include patchwork throughout town. Most recently, you'll see patching on Elm Avenue, a little bit on Main Street and things of that nature. Also assessing drainage throughout the town and repairing damaged curbs, installing concrete pads and whatnot. On the park side, routine maintenance continues, including tree planting, turf care, play equipment maintenance. That all remains ongoing. Obviously, with the change in the seasons, that's going to be wrapping up relatively soon. Wastewater and storm collection, a large project, relatively large operational project concluded last week with the repair to the collapsed storm main on Highland Avenue being assessed and then carried out for repair last week. We've had numerous complaints over the course of the summer on localized flooding. All of those are being assessed as staff have assessed individually as staff have time. When it comes to our water utility, annual flushing program has completed for 2024. As well, ongoing maintenance, including the addition of flow meters and other upgrades in the water treatment plant are ongoing as well. We are filling 2 key vacancies immediately related to the senior manager of operations position, which was the public works manager. That position has been vacant since approximately June. It will be filled very soon. And the newly created position of project manager will have an incumbent in it in the next few weeks as well. Development activity is ongoing. So development activity, once council passes approvals for developments, the work is really just beginning for us. So you'll see a lot of development activity when it comes to inspections and whatnot from our planning side, and when it comes to connection to municipal services and approving key infrastructure upgrades or the infrastructure associated with that development on our engineering and public works side. So a lot of that activity is ongoing as it relates to some of our larger developments on the east end and the west end, as well as smaller development files throughout town. When it comes to planning and development, our housing accelerator information has been updated on the website and on Wolfville Blooms, providing additional information as to the progress of that initiative. You'll hear a little bit more about it shortly, but a pilot project led by Coordinated Access began on October 21st at the Visitor Information Center, where an access point for those services have been set up. Trained staff will meet individuals at risk or experiencing homelessness to complete a brief intake form, which will then be shared through the Coordinated Access system to connect them with appropriate services. And I'd like to point out Lindsay and other staff who are involved with this file and who have made those arrangements to see that service provided in the town. Moving into parks, invasive species removal is ongoing at Reservoir Park, with native planting occurring by the Blomidon Naturalist Society, including red oak, sugar maple, white pines, and a variety of pollinator gardens and plants. This is a fantastic example of where town staff are working alongside volunteers in our community to see this much needed attention to native species in our community actually progress with some work. Further, staff are planning a technical workshop with key stakeholders to ready us to create concept for investing in Waterfront Park to coordinate with the Department of Agriculture dike topping project. So that project is moving forward. On the provincial side, our staff, thank you for council's earlier direction and involvement with that project. Our staff are now plugged into that project as it proceeds to see how we can support the provincial aspects of it, but also to prepare our own aspects of it as well when the time comes. I'll spend just a couple of minutes talking about some of the wonderful events and the incredible number of people who have come through this community over the course of the last number of months. We completed our concert series at Waterfront Park this past couple of months. Average attendance was around 60, but some audiences reached well over 100. On Canada Day, we welcomed over 800 mostly residents to Waterfront Park. Mud Creek Days welcomed 2,000 residents over that weekend. And Welcome to Wolfville event in partnership with Acadia, so that street party that was held. If we're going to measure number of attendees and hot dogs, we had approximately 1,000 hot dogs served, and I think probably a little bit over that in attendees. So kudos to all of our staff who are involved with putting on those events. It certainly adds to the atmosphere around here and creating a wonderful vibe throughout the town throughout those months. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we just closed off Nova Scotia Music Week, which the town was involved as a supporting player as well, which brought in even more visitors to our community over the course of the last week or so. To the less exciting but equally as important side of our business, final tax bills were issued at the end of August and were due on October 1st. We currently have 207 tax accounts with outstanding balances, most if not all of which we expect to be able to collect on over the course of the next business cycle. Engineering now has the ability to inspect all major infrastructure and assets within the street envelope, thanks to some improvements in our GIS system. This will improve asset information accuracy for capital project assessment and operational maintenance. The paving condition index update for 2024 has also now been complete. Forward-looking, our winter parking ban will be in effect from December 1st to March 31st, as it is every year. And that will be communicated to the public, and the implications of that parking ban are known. One last piece, it's not in your report, but I'll note it. It was circulated by email. We had a very successful, in partnership with Acadia, we had a very successful homecoming weekend during Acadia homecoming. Very minimal, unsanctioned, I'll call them, events outside the regular programming, all of which were handled very well, very professionally, very respectfully, both by our compliance staff and the RCMP. Folks will also note that that was an incredibly busy weekend, as it was also Election Day. So a lot of things going on concurrently on that weekend, all of which I would suggest were handled very, very well by our very competent staff and partners. So that's my report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that very thorough report, CEO. I'll open the floor to anybody that has questions. Councillor Van Niekerk.
I just had a question about the voter participation numbers that you mentioned. So the rate sounds great, and I was just wondering if you had numbers in terms of how many voters voted this election compared to the previous election in total.
I don't have that on in front of me, but we'll get that number and report it back.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Palmer.
A couple of questions for you, Glenn. It came up from public input. Have we given Devour their first payment? That might be a Beth question.
Yeah, I'll have to. Do you have that information, Beth? I'd invite you to provide it if you do. Otherwise, I can find it. Yeah, we'll provide it now or in follow-up.
For the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And the other question, you sort of addressed it, but when we were here, I can't remember if it was this spring or last spring, but the woolly algid and the cedar, are we doing anything? Are we expecting a budget number for that? Like, because that's kind of
On the invasive species?
yes, of the woolly algid in particular.
I'll invite, if they have the information off the top of their heads, either Alex or Devin, otherwise we can follow up on that.
Mark, are you approaching to say something about? Okay. Sorry. As far as the question goes around budget, we're still kind of looking at that, and we'll bring something back as part of the budget cycle. There's a couple of different projects that we presented at our planning committee, and maybe we should bring that kind of full update to committee of the whole next month, and then that can kind of transition into the budget if there's an ask. It's not clear yet if there will be, just given how some of the management's going, but we can bring back kind of a full report on that as part of the budget, as I say.
It just seems to me that when the Blomen, whoever they were, sorry, their name is escaping me, the Wolfel Blomen, who are they? Blomen Natural Society, when they presented here, that there was kind of some urgency to it, and I just didn't want it to slide through without it being addressed, that's all.
Yeah.
Councillor Elliott.
if I may, to the CAO. Several people ask regularly about various public works issues. And I find myself saying, well, you know, the sidewalks on my street haven't been done because we had a whole bunch of other issues due to the flooding in July. I think that's a true statement. And I'm just wondering what percentage of the projects that were intended got sidelined this July.
Yeah, I don't have a percentage of projects that were sidelined. We're doing the CAO report and the organizational overview kind of back to back for a purpose, and that we've provided some level of detail in both that will provide you a better insight as to where we currently stand on a wide range of projects. So I can tell you that through different operational occurrences, namely, you know, some staffing, the flood of in July, some projects did get kind of sidelined. So I couldn't say exactly like a percentage of those projects. But Alex will touch on a little bit of that through the course of our presentation as well. And you can consider both this CAO's report and the organizational overview as a bit of a primer to be able to have these further conversations through our operational planning, our strategic planning, and our budget planning through the course of the next number of months into next year. So, yeah.
Mayor McCabe?
Thank you. Under recreation events, it has larger tree pickup is planned for late November. I'm not sure how that fits into recreation unless it's a lumberjack event I missed, but and further to that, can you speak a little bit on the compost site? Just give an update.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I also cannot speak to the larger tree pickup. May have just been a misplacement in the report, but I'll allow somebody at the back of the room to chime in once I speak a little bit more on the compost piece if they'd like. Otherwise, we can follow up on that. So council has provided direction to staff and asked questions to staff through the spring of the year on the compost site. So if those of you who are a little less familiar, there was a yard and debris waste site on the east end that was removed due to the developments that's now taking place in that same location. And on a couple of occasions, council has asked what the options are, or if anything can be done to provide a similar type service to that in the town on the go forward in the absence of that site. So we don't have a particular outcome to suggest at this point in time, but we have had a few further follow-up discussions as to what the options might be. And similarly, more information will be provided on that over the course of the next coming months through operational planning so that council can provide further direction and we can identify what, if any, service is going to replace that site.
I don't see any more lights on, so no further questions. Okay, move on. So we have some staff reports. I'm assuming, Glenn, you're going to be doing the organizational overview or somebody else going to be doing
Yeah,
it?
so the organizational overview, I think, how do you guys want to do it? Do you want to come to the side desk to provide your parts or are you going to sit back there? Okay, this is going to be a team event.
Okay.
So I'm gonna kick us off, and then as various departments are coming up in the presentation, those directors will take those pieces. So I'll let them decide how they want to organize themselves back there. And I'm also aware of the time. We're at 9:30 now. We'll have to take a break at 10 o'clock. So we've got approximately 30 minutes of content, and we'll get through that as best we can, and then take a break and come back to wherever we've left off. Okay, getting my notes. So this presentation will support council's orientation by sharing information about the town's structure, ongoing activities. Yeah, if you could throw it up on the top there, Laura, please. It will also provide a brief update on a handful of current priorities. So you'll see that when we get into some of the departmental updates. You'll see, again, complementing what the CAO report. This presentation immediately follows the CAO report because there will be some overlap, which I've said 3 times now and didn't move through my notes. Yeah. Each director will speak to their departments. You'll notice that the Wolfville Fire Department and the RCMP are not present to speak to their operations. They've been scheduled for December 3rd, and we'll go over their piece on December 3rd. And we're also going to coordinate a little bit of a walkthrough of the Wolfville Fire Department at that point in time as well. At the end of the presentation, there will be an opportunity for questions. By sharing info on how we're organized and what we're working on, we hope this provides council with an appropriate basis as we have more detailed strategic, operational, capital, and budget discussions in the coming months. So you can forward the slide, Laura. I've already touched on kind of our purpose. This is how we're organized. So I'll just spend a moment going through it for those who are less familiar. So town council, you folks have been elected and provide that governance and oversight role, that strategic and policy direction to the entire town and its operations. I report to you. I am your employee. You direct me through the approval of budgets, plans, and policies, and through your direction, I carry out those tasks and whatnot with the assistance of our incredible staff. There is very little that I do in isolation, almost nothing that I can do alone. So I am highly dependent on a very competent team here to be able to carry out directions that council provides. So my immediate reports are across the top of that list. So our Director of Finance and Corporate Services, our Director of Engineering and Public Works, Director of Planning and Economic Development. And then we also have the Fire Chief and the Police Sergeant. And then we also have staff who are in my immediate CAO's office who provide senior leadership and operational leadership as well, specifically our Town Clerk and Manager of Administration, our Manager of Communications and Strategic Initiatives, as well as our compliance coordinators and our emergency management coordinator. So they are all direct reports to me. Each individual director will speak a little bit more into their department, so I won't get into the weeds there, but you'll see there's certain divisions and distinctions within each department based on function. However, we have no choice but we're a relatively small organization, and we've got no choice but operate to the best of our ability across our organization as much as possible. So this is not your typical government department where lines have leaders and never the two shall meet across the organization. We are highly dependent on working across our organization, as many of the challenges that we face don't fit neatly into a line department. So a lot of our effort is actually focused on the coordination of work across the organization. You can skip to the next one, Laura, please. And this is where I hand it over to Finance and Corporate Services.
Good morning. For those, I'll stand up just in case anyone doesn't know me. I'm Beth Hopkins. I'm the Director of Finance and Corporate Services. I've been with the town since mid-February of this year, so jumped into budget process with the previous council. I'm looking forward to working with the current council. Laura, you can probably, do we want to go through the org chart for?
Yeah, go ahead. Just take a minute. Yep.
So within finance, the umbrella for finance covers GIS, IT, as well as finance. That's okay, that's fine. Within that, we have a GIS coordinator, an IT manager, a finance and accounting manager, and then we have the various administration as well as tax. I didn't actually do this slide myself, so hold on. And my eyes are not that good. Billing clerk, accounts payable clerk, and an admin assistant. The accounts payable clerk and the admin assistant neither work full-time. They work approximately 3 days a week, full-time, and, but the rest do work full-time. IT is housed in the basement of this building, if anyone's looking for David, who's on the end of the table. And then we have the tax clerk, accounts payable, and admin. They're on the first floor. And then myself and the accounting manager are on the second floor. If you happen to want to come visit, our doors are always open. Our doors are always open. As I mentioned, we encompass multidisciplinary responsibilities. Primarily, we look after the budget. We look after the tax roll. The tax roll encompasses commercial properties, residential properties, and resource properties. There's a little bit of information on the slides as far as the number of residential properties, which are approximately 1,627. Then we have commercial properties of 107, and then we have resource properties of around 17. Overall, residential properties, their assessments are just over $587 million, close to 600 million. Commercial is 43.4, and resource principally is exempt, but they're slightly over $1 million. The responsibilities within finance are reporting, analysis, and budget preparatory. In addition to that, we have accounts receivable, accounts payable, procurement. We look after business operations as far as the systems, the ERP system that we use to house our data and inform and interrelate with other departments. We also look after corporate admin support, the insurances through our department, payroll, and some human resources support as well. Overall, for 24-25, our operating budget was slightly over $15 million and just over $6.3 million for capital budgets. IT has a number of responsibilities as well. David's behind the scenes, but he's all in all of our business, so to speak. He looks after all of the administrative services as far as devices, your laptops, your desktops, your iPads, any phones, all of our cybersecurity, data retention, network administration, help desk, and any back-end infrastructure as far as our servers, et cetera. GIS is our web and database services, anything geographic, what we're doing on the roads, what we're doing on the sidewalks, et cetera. And that is finance and corporate services. If anyone has any questions, let me know.
Just given the time, we'll probably just hold the questions.
Okay.
Right, we'll just hold the questions until the end, then we'll do the whole batch. And next we have Alex, who's our Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Good morning, everyone. Alex Souza, Director of Engineering and Public Works. Thank you, Glenn. Just a very brief overview on the core functions of engineering and public works. Engineering and Public Works is responsible for the delivery of sustainable and consistent, safe municipal drinking water, wastewater collection and treatment of wastewater, management and upgrade of town-owned buildings, infrastructure, and other facilities, management and all-season maintenance of transportation infrastructure, which includes snow removal, pedestrian and traffic safety and mobility, maintenance and replacements of fleet vehicles and equipment, asset management, capital project planning, procurement, and management of the implementation of those capital projects, and of course, parks, infrastructure, and maintenance. Next slide, please. Just a brief overview on some of the ongoing activities of engineering and public works, and some of this, I apologize, may be repetitive from the CAO report. We have at the top of the list ongoing project management of high priority complex projects such as our wastewater treatment plant phase 2 upgrades, water system projects such as our third municipal well, flood risk, and of course stormwater risk assessment and planning for future upgrade work. This year we delivered on 2 major capital projects, which would be the Visitor Information Center demolition and reconstruction, completed in late June this year, a month ahead of schedule, and the East End parking lot, which is now open to the public. I believe they're just finishing off some final items there now with the lighting and electrical, and that project will be 100% complete. Ongoing maintenance activities such as road patching, tree work, turf and play equipment maintenance, sign replacements through town, and of course, other water system maintenance. Development activities, so engineering, review and oversight of development work happening in the East End, the West End, and other individual smaller scale developments through town. Engineering and Public Works is frequently responding to resident inquiries. And of course, on the operations side, significant emphasis has been placed on addressing the following operational challenges. Reintegration of park staff following the dissolution of the Parks Department. Hiring of a senior manager of operations following the unexpected departure of our former Public Works manager. Hiring a new project manager. It's a new position within the department to assist with the growing project workload, and identifying opportunities for process improvements and staff capacity building. That's all I have.
Only one or two things going on. So next we'll hand it over to Devin to go through our planning and community development department.
Thank you, folks. Is this on?
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure to be speaking with the new council. I'm excited to work with you all. I've worked with many of you before, but I'll try to give a bit of an overview here. I think this is going to be very Cole's Notes version, but I'll do my best. So within planning and community development, we have gone through a little bit of a transition. So right now, what's happening is I'm overseeing both the community development side, which is our recreation programming, events, the operation of the visitor center, and somewhat of a strategic piece around tourism. And we're also still sort of sharing some of the parks function coming out of Kelton's departure. And so that's been a transition, just to speak very honestly here with everyone. And then the core function that I've been here sort of doing for 10 years is on the town planning side. So with previous teams, the focus there was really around the planning and economic development. And so that our team there has built a bit over time, but some of them are here today. So Mark and Lindsay are both with us. Nick Zamora is over here, manager of community development as well. Yeah, so that's, if we can go to the next slide, I have some other notes. So yeah, just a little bit more about the transition. From my perspective, there's been a bit of a focus recalibration, I guess, for me. Adding capacity with people like Mark here has given a bit more opportunity to work a bit more with the community development team. But this is all quite recent in the grand scheme of how things happen in government. So we definitely have aspirations in community development. That's Nick and I, Luke, and the rest of the team. To work with our community partners in a more meaningful way. I think certainly council all knows this and probably heard it a lot at the door. People really want to be involved in what we're doing. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a few tidbits here. We've worked with the Wolfville Business Development Corporation during my time significantly, and they have a long history of working with the town and making progress on projects. We've been working with the Community Oven and the museum and many other partners that I won't be able to mention, but there's many more. Certainly Mark and I have worked really closely on this pilot project up with the Blommen and Nattrass at Reservoir. I think that's a really interesting approach. I think the folks that have been doing that are very capable, and we're learning as we go through that with our partners, which I think is a really important point to keep in mind. We have some other ideas around trails and other pieces that I think members of the community have a really strong desire to be involved. And I think there's ways for us to facilitate that. Glenn went through, just on the next point, a bit of an overview of events and recreation programming and sort of tourism from the CAO report. So I won't go into great depth on that, but I would welcome perhaps a more focused discussion at some point, particularly around tourism. I think there's a desire to have that discussion in town and some things happening regionally that would be helpful to bring to council. Our department in the cycle of development does a lot of front end on larger projects. So we've, over the last, in my time here, almost 10 years, we've brought the West End development sort of online, and you're seeing that being built out now. We've worked on 292 Main Street, which is a high profile project that was mentioned here this morning. We've also more recently done a secondary plan and brought the East End development off of Maple into existence, and it's starting to be built out now. So some of that council work that we do is primarily through myself and the planning staff, but the next point I just want to underscore again, the people that are really doing, I think, the harder work are Amanda Brown, who's our fire inspector, fire and life safety inspector, James Collicutt, who's our senior building official, who we've had here for quite a long time, and have trained James to get to the point that he's at now. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Marcia Elliott, who's our development officer, who's really kind of the glue in our department, does a significant amount behind the scenes. Those jobs don't, I try, to be honest, not to bring them in front of council because they are very black and white in many ways. And those jobs aren't meant to be politicized. So you'll more interact with the planning staff, but just know that there's a lot of work going on there behind the scenes. I just have a note here about growth management, investment readiness, economic development. Sometimes these things get thrown around, and someone mentioned this morning about revenue. That's certainly part of what the planning does, is prepares areas of town for higher assessment growth through development. And so I think that's an important discussion that will come significantly at you moving into the next point around the Housing Accelerator Fund work. So the town has been given almost $2 million to accelerate housing supply. Some of the work that's mentioned in the planning report that you received will come in more detail directly to council in December. But really what we're looking to do there is bring forward a growth management strategy that's a bit more holistic than just talking about housing in a vacuum. I realize when you're going out to residents, people are talking about infrastructure and parks and trails and all of the surrounding pieces of housing, and the quality of life piece is so important. So what that all ends up leading to is council's responsibility around policy through our municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. So a lot of the Housing Accelerator work within our action plan is really steering itself towards a municipal planning strategy review, which is, I think, great for a new council to really dig into that and make some decisions on how we want to manage things over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years at least. And the last point I'll make is just a lot of our focus has also been, and this isn't recent, this has been over the last 5 years or so, is setting up some of the active transportation network investments. So we've also been really fortunate to receive over $3 million in support to build out a active transportation network in the town. And that work is moving forward through a working group that we have to support the work, and you'll hopefully see significant activity in the next construction season on that. So I think I'll leave it there, and we're passing this on.
Back to me. Thank you very much, Devin. So the Office of the CAO. plays in a nutshell, largely a leadership and a coordination function. So the core functions are listed there. I won't get into those in any great detail, but I'll just give you a nod to who is involved with these functions. Specifically, our town clerk and manager of administration, Laura, who's just behind us here. Barb Shaw is our manager of communications and strategic initiatives. At the front of the building, at the office immediately to your left, when you come in the front door, you will sometimes find Caden and Marin, our compliance officers there. Most times you'll find them out and about town doing one of their many functions. And Dan Stovall is also part of this office. He operates out of the fire department as our regional emergency management coordinator. So when significant weather events are forthcoming or training is on the docket, you will see lots of emails and messages from Dan reminding you to make the proper preparations and encouraging you to know what you need to be looking at and what the community needs to be looking at in terms of emergency management. We don't have a box on it there, but his position and work is important nonetheless. Garth Regan is also operates our fire department and does some work to keep the fleet maintained and the hall in good working order. And so Garth is also operates out of the fire hall just behind us here. So this is a list of some of the activities that have taken up most of our time over the course of the last year and a bit. I'll just highlight a few of them very quickly. As we had already mentioned, municipal election administration. So this endeavor began well before the election got underway and involved a lot of liaising both in the community and with the province to manage and deliver a good election process. We coordinate all of the council and committee meetings. So a lot of the content for some of the subject matter committees, source water, planning, others come from the department, but the coordination of them with you comes through the CAO's office. We process a lot of information requests. So whether they be through routine access or the more formal freedom of information process, all of that intake and coordination comes through the CAO's office. The operational plan that we'll be discussing over the course of the next few months, again, while the content comes from each individual department, the overall coordination of that plan comes through our office. Any policies that we deem or you deem to be in need of update, review, or development is coordinated through us. We provide organizational leadership, engagement, and human resource management. Community compliance activities, so that includes bylaw enforcement, parking enforcement, civic address inspection, and a litany of other smaller items. Accessibility plan and equity and anti-racism plan coordination, which will occupy a fair amount of council's time over the course of the next number of months. That is coordinated by Barb in our office. All internal and external organizational communication comes through the CAO's office. Leadership, and that's the point, so to speak, on our MOU in the town and gown relationship with Acadia comes through our office, as well as liaison with any local, regional, provincial, or national partners is often initiated or coordinated through our office and then branches out to whatever functional areas is the subject for that. I've already mentioned King's Transit. And we also are involved with a fair number of high-profile key special projects, specifically the fire service merger with Kings County and Greenwich Fire, the regional recreation center that's been discussed for Kings County, and the community safety project as well. So that's all been coordinated through the CAO's office. And just in terms of, we've mentioned a few times here, the organization has undergone a lot of personnel changes over the course of the last 2.5 years, myself being among them. So I started just in July, but a number of our folks in the CAO's office have been with the organization for, in the range of about 4 years or so. There's been a lot of movement across the organization in terms of personnel. So just to keep that on your radars as we continue to talk about the various projects that are ongoing. So, oh yes. So what's next? Why did we just go through all this information with you? Some of which you're familiar with, some of which maybe you're not. Consider this a bit of a primer. This is your first kick at the can as a new council in terms of how we're organized and what we're doing. This is your first opportunity for questions and conversation, far from your last. Where this fits in is we have a few more rounds of more of the orientation type material, specifically next Tuesday and now next Thursday. It's not on that schedule, but we've now blocked in next Thursday evening as well for additional orientation. Among those two meetings, you'll get a really good sense, again, for how we're organized, your responsibilities as councillors, and how we are all going to work together to make this ship point in the right direction and reach its destination. We'll also be scattering different orientation activities and different operational information in committee of the whole meetings over the course of the next number of months. That way it becomes a little bit more part of your normal everyday approach to the business that you're doing. And you'll also, it's felt that you'll also have a better opportunity to digest the information that we're firing at you instead of, holding you down and spraying you with a fire hose over the course of an 8-hour session. So scattering a little bit in here and there, so it's a little bit more digestible. So I won't go through all those additional meetings, but that gives you a sense as to where things are going. Where does this fit in the overall picture? The course of the next number of months, so from now until March 31st, you will be in a fairly concentrated effort to develop and approve our operational and capital plans, as well as the budget, annual budget for the town of Wolfville by the end of March. So there will be, when I say there will be many opportunities for conversation, there will be many opportunities for conversation as all of this material comes back at you in multiple different forms at multiple different times over the course of the next number of months. The intention, and we'll get more into this at another time, the intention is that once we finish this operational period, at that point in time, we'll have a more focused conversation about strategic planning for the rest of the council term. So that's the intended pathway at this point in time, and that's how all the information that you were provided this morning kind of fits in at this stage. I know I've only left 2 minutes for questions, and I can feel Barb's eyes from the back of the room to stay on time. When we come back, Madam Chair, if you'd like to provide an opportunity for questions, but otherwise, if folks want to just write them down, as I said, there will be opportunities for more questions and discussion as we move forward.
I know that was a lot of information, so thank you. So right now I have a motion to adjourn for a quick recess. Okay.
You can just call the motion.
Okay, motion to adjourn for a quick recess. Pictures, what time should I say that we would be back? Like 10:30, am I thinking, just for people?
10:45 is probably
10:45?
safer, yeah.
Okay.
You got pictures.
Thank you, and we are back. So we were just finishing off, the CAO and the directors were going over our organizational review. And Glenn made some notes to say, do you have any notes? And we're going to move on to questions from some of that. So I'm going to open the floor to questions from the last reports. Councillor Williams?
I have a question for Beth and the financial report. If you add up the commercial and the residential accounts, you don't get to 100%. So what accounts for that?
So agriculture, agricultural,
Right.
they're called resource. It's referred to as a resource categorization of property.
Yeah, thank you. We typically don't include some of those smaller items because there's such a small portion of our revenue or assessment that in a presentation like that, we typically don't include them.
If you use that argument, then there was a 10% difference, which is more than the commercial. So
fair.
Yeah. I have another question. There was a very brief mention of the library system. And I think I was slightly surprised how brief it was, given that the library system may become cohabitant with the council, with the town council, in the future in the new building. I had my ear bent by Janet Ness, the formidable Janet Ness, about this when I was canvassing. And I wondered why there wasn't a committee or a committee member meeting with the Annapolis Valley Regional Library System.
So the presentation that you've received today is about the operations and structure of the town proper. So we are part of the Annapolis Valley Regional Library. So that's outside the town's organizational structure. We have Janet Ness is the town's appointee to the Annapolis Valley Regional Library Board. And we are inviting the Annapolis Valley Regional Library and other intermunicipal organizations that the town is part of to come forward for a regional orientation. So multiple intermunicipal organizations with multiple councils all doing the orientation at once. I don't believe, did we have that scheduled yet? It's the 11th of December. Yeah. So we've been, because there's so many people involved, we've been struggling to get that one scheduled, but that is now scheduled for December the 11th. So that'll give you a little bit more sense as to where the library sits and the linkages with the town and so on. Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? I don't see any lights popping on, so I'm assuming we're good. There'll be lots of time to go over many stuff as our CAO said. So thank you. So we are going to move on to RFD 053 2024, the Wolfville Street naming. And okay, there we go, Mark.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ingham and Mayor McKay and Council. Today, we've got a brief review here as an opportunity to name a street in Wolfville. This is in the East End. So the town of Wolfville has a street naming policy. This policy was established in early 2000s. It's been amended a bit over the time, but essentially it applies to the naming of new public streets in Wolfville. It requires that staff consult with the Wolfville Historical Society, requesting a recommendation from that group. And then we bring that recommendation to council for your consideration and decision. So ultimately, we're looking for a decision from this group to name a particular street, which I'll show in just a moment. It's worth noting, however, that council may consider other names. It is ultimately a decision of council. You can choose not to take the recommendation offered, but the policy does guide us through this kind of system. So yeah, we've consulted with the Historical Society. They have recommended Kenny Crescent. We'll take a look at where that is located in a moment. The policy, however, does kind of guide council to consider names of individuals. So typically these street names would be based on importance, individuals with importance to the town. So in its structure, it encourages the Historical Society to consider former mayors of the town, families or individuals of various importance, names, former street names. Of course, we don't want to have duplicates, and ultimately that's recommendation from the society is brought to council. So this is a familiar area. This is Maple Avenue. The line shown in red is the kind of new street. That's what we're looking to name today. This street is kind of under construction. If you've been in Reservoir Park, you can see this being built out over the past year or so. This is part of the kind of larger East End development area. This portion west of Maple Avenue was located on the Kenny farmland, so the Kenny family farm. And you can see that's labeled as Kenny lands just to the north there. So the Historical Society has recommended that this street name be Kenny Crescent. It's the crescent suffix is appropriate here. It's kind of a curved or crescent shaped street where both ends meet back at the same thoroughfare, which would be Maple Avenue. So just zooming out a bit, the East End, development area is sort of comprised of two portions on either side of Maple Avenue. There will be opportunities for other things to be named in the future, including additional streets. Other parks and trails and plazas and various networks and amenities will also have naming opportunities. But it's worth noting there aren't that many streets in this network. There aren't an endless opportunities for names, and so we do want to be intentional with our name selection. And but there is opportunities for some additional streets and other names to be recognized. So some alternatives here. This is worth recognizing. The Historical Society is looking at Kenny Crescent. Staff support that recommendation and have brought that to you in this report. We just wanted to highlight, however, that the developer of the lands west of Maple Avenue, which would be Bryson Developments primarily, would look to name this as McLean Crescent. This would be in memory of a colleague of theirs, Adam McLean, who worked with Bryson Developments on this and other development projects. We also have had a number of requests, particularly from the Lightfoot family. They would like to recognize Donnie Lightfoot, former barber in town, among other things. They are interested in recognizing Donnie in some way, whether it be on this particular street or others. And again, both of these names could be used elsewhere. So that could be Lightfoot Lane, it could be McLean Way, etc. These are two examples that are kind of somewhat relevant. These are the ones that have kind of crossed our table in most recent time. However, it's also worth noting that the Historical Society has a running list of other possible names of importance. So these may include, the Oliver family, the Nowlin family, Coville, other First Nations connections as well. So there's a long list of possible street names for council to consider. This one, however, we've got from the Historical Society as Kenny Crescent. It's just worth noting, however, that we do need to be, I think it's worth taking the time to consider it carefully and be intentional, because we don't have that many streets to name, and there are probably more requests for recognition than there will be new streets. So with that, I would pass it back to the Deputy Mayor, and this would be a potential draft motion to approve Kenny Crescent. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Should we put the motion on the floor before we start questions? Okay.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay, Councillor Elliott.
I would move that the Committee of the Whole forward the following motion to council for a decision, that council approve naming the new street in the East End development identified in the report given to us by Mark, as recommended by the Wolfville Historical Society and in accordance with street naming policy number 610-004, and the name would be Kenny Crescent.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Butler, thank you. Is there any, we'll open it up to some discussion on that. Councillor Elliott?
No, sorry.
Oh. Councillor Palmer.
I'll just say that with all due respect to the Bryson Group and naming it after their lost partner, I guess he was actually, and to the Lightfoot family, and maybe we'll save that one for later, but I can tell you that I was talking to Johnny Kenny, who was actually the former landowner, and he was pretty tickled about it. I will point out that Kenny was a former mayor of our town in the 70s or 80s. Early 80s. So that, and Bill was one of the ones who put in motion, I suppose, the fact that that land is actually developable because it was agricultural and he allowed it to be changed to whatever the zoning was. Devin would know what they changed that to. Devin, what did they change that to? Yeah, earlier, like 10 years ago, probably.
It was that, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I just think that's a great name myself.
Any other questions? No? But if it's okay, I just have one quick question. Mark, can you tell me how many streets would there be named in that that development?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think at least 2 additional.
2 additional, okay.
But there could be opportunities for named driveways as well. It depends on how it's built out.
Okay.
So there could be more, but at least 2.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I don't see any more lights on. So all those in favor? With motion? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that is carried unanimously. Okay. Thank you, Mark. Going to hand this information report, I'll hand it over to our CEO. Thank you. The information report by staff, I'm going to hand this over to Glenn right now, our CEO.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this topic was last discussed at the committee's September 10th meeting. At that meeting, based on, and sorry, by this topic, I mean specifically the matter of unhoused individuals living in Roby Tufts Park. At that meeting, based on the info available at the time, the committee acknowledged that what we've been doing to date by providing wellness checks and basic life safety services with no dedicated resources was not sustainable. That third-party service providers were critical to the path forward. Excuse me. And that living in tents in public spaces is unhealthy and in extreme conditions, dangerous. The committee further asked that we contact provincial officials to solicit support for this situation. We're back before you today, both with staff and partners, to share additional information obtained as we further refine the options that were previously provided to you based on this feedback. Specifically, information will be shared concerning the resources available to unhoused individuals in the area and the town's capacity to support these services. This information will be provided by our Director of Planning and Community Development, Devin Lake, as well as our partners with Open Arms, Leanne Jennings and Nick Haddock, and our partner at Coordinated Access, Allison Caldwell, all of whom will share some comments with you following Devin's comments. Following their presentations, the committee will have an opportunity to ask questions and further refine our understanding of the situation. Following these questions, I will respectfully request that the committee make move in camera so that additional details may be shared related to public safety. As we all know, people without homes, sheltering in public spaces is a complex problem. Right now, there are 4 to 5 people whose circumstances and choices have brought them to Roby Tufts Park. We hope that this morning we can provide information and facilitate a discussion that will bring us closer to decisions that will lead to better outcomes for these 4 or 5 individuals and the community. Again, I'll remind folks, this is being provided as information. We are not asking for any decision today. The purpose of this discussion, as staff, we have learned a lot over the course of the last 2 or so months since our last discussion, and our purpose here is to share what we've learned with you so that decisions can be forthcoming. So with that, I will hand the baton over to Devin.
Thanks, Glenn. And just to recognize Lindsay and Barb as well, who've put a significant effort into this. Can we just open the report? Laura, can I? So just for those that might not be familiar with this kind of format, so there was a report that was submitted as per the date that's there in black at the top. So in September, as Glenn mentioned, and we often will do this when we're trying to compile information and as staff go on these kind of learning journeys ourselves, obviously we want council to be in the same place making decisions. So a lot of this that we presented in September still stands. Largely that, I won't go through all of that detail, but really it was a spectrum of options for council to consider. There were some options there as well that we were talking about as far as was mentioned earlier in the presentations about citing some type of structure on town land that was mentioned in those options as well. And there was the other end of the spectrum presented as well. So just to give you an update here, so we've talked with Open Arms significantly. We've talked to Steve Wilsack and other advocates. We've been meeting with Allison, and she'll also come up and give a presentation. So all of this has been incredibly helpful in sort of moving our perspective forward. What the gist of this is from the staff side is I don't think there's anything really solid here other than we think we should be really careful in moving forward with temporary options and how we do that. We're not sure that we're well equipped to do that as staff. I think, you know, individual, community, provincial support is really essential. And at times we felt kind of by ourselves on this, just to speak really honestly, with some of the earlier reports that we brought to the last council. So this is evolving, changing rapidly, and I'm really encouraged to have Leanne and Nick here to give you some perspective, and Allison as well, obviously, because the fact of the matter is staff's expertise in this is pretty limited. So I think I won't go much further other than to say we did try to provide a bit of perhaps somewhat plain language graphics in this so you can see the complexity of the system that we're interacting with. Hopefully you can see where potential role can be for council and staff. And again, this is the housing continuum that the folks that have been on council are aware of, but just moving through different circumstantial examples as you see those arrows moving back and forth and how easy it is for folks to slip from sort of one position to another. So maybe I'll leave it there for now, and then we can invite our partners up here to speak. Did you want Allison or Leanne, do you want to jump out first or? Yeah. Sir, I did say both names. We're going to start with Leanne. You can sit right here. You and Nick can sit up here and I'll get out of your way.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Leanne Jennings. I'm the Executive Director of Open Arms Resource Center. Thank you to Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, and the public for this opportunity to speak to you. I believe a report from us entitled Strategy to Address Homelessness was provided in the agenda package for today, and that's really the information I'm going to share with you to let you know what services we provide and how we sort of fit into the system of care for individuals experiencing homelessness in the Annapolis Valley. At Open Arms, we aim to serve individuals experiencing homelessness throughout the Annapolis Valley, and we aim to address multiple points on this continuum. So it's very appropriate that the continuum remains up on the screen. And we've expanded our services to better reflect our desire to support along the continuum. Historically, we've been primarily a shelter provider, and we are the only 24/7 shelter provider in the Annapolis Valley. You are probably familiar with our downtown Kempville location, which we refer to as Oasis. It is a low barrier housing focused shelter where individuals, we offer beds on a first come, first served basis. And we have 20 beds that it's in a communal setting. So there's multiple gender specific rooms with multiple beds in each room. We offer 3 meals a day, shower, laundry, etc., as well as housing supports by our shelter workers looking to support individuals in stabilizing. That could look like getting their ID, connecting to income supports, whether it be government or volunteer opportunities or employment. Once individuals stabilize at the Oasis shelter, they're recommended for a longer duration of stay at the Oasis shelter, and some individuals who experience a high degree of housing readiness and ability to live independently can get referred to our second stage shelter, which we refer to as Tiny Meadows. Some may be familiar with it as a pallet shelter. The units have been manufactured by the company Pallet, delivered on a pallet and then reassembled in the community of North Kentville in a piece of land owned by the province adjacent to Valley Regional Hospital. This site consists of 3 hygiene buildings, which have laundry facilities, showers, and washrooms, as well as 20 individualized shelter units. And the community building is currently under construction, and we anticipate that being completed this week. So in the absence of the completed community building, we've been operating with a large tent where individuals have their dining, and we have food delivered on site to accommodate that. So we haven't been able to operate at 100% capacity with all 20 individual units being occupied because of the reduced capacity without the full amenities available on the site. The site just hasn't been completed and it's been still a bit of a construction site. But as I said, we anticipate in the coming weeks to get up to full capacity and have all 20 individualized units occupied, which will then free up a considerable amount of space at our Oasis downtown shelter. We also are responsible for the coordination of extreme weather shelter or emergency shelter in the Annapolis Valley, and there's specific criteria around when that is to be provided. And we anticipate opening additional shelter sites with 24-hour staffing to accommodate the need for additional shelter beds during extreme weather. We have recently been able to launch a housing program, 2 housing programs actually. The first is an intensive case management program that comes with a direct subsidy. It's targeting individuals who've experienced chronic homelessness, which we define as 2 years or more without a stable housing opportunity. We have employed 2 intensive case workers that have operate with a higher degree of contact with these individuals. So it'll be in meetings, either in community or once they're in a housing opportunity multiple times a week to support them in succeeding in stabilizing in their housing or finding, whether that be market housing or finding other appropriate housing opportunities for those individuals. Our other housing program is for mid to low acuity, has a higher caseload associated with it, and journeys with individuals in supporting them in identifying housing opportunities and helping them succeed in those housing opportunities. I'll just touch upon this next one lightly. Our organization is interested in acquiring and maintaining and operating affordable housing units throughout the Annapolis Valley. We believe strongly that in order to preserve existing affordable units and to increase the number of affordable units in the valley and have them be forever affordable. A really good model is having these buildings owned and operated by nonprofit organizations. And we come with a good deal of experience in property management. So we feel like we're well suited to be a player in that realm in the valley. So stay tuned. We're hopeful to have some exciting announcements in the coming months regarding that. We also operate a thrift store to provide clothing opportunities, not only for the purchasing public at a low cost, but we provide a voucher system for individuals who can't afford clothing. And we work with our sector partners to ensure clothing as a necessity is available to individuals who are in need throughout the valley. Finally, I will touch upon our outreach program. This is a program that we are currently building. We were funded by Reaching Home in March and April of this year to run a pilot program where we had dedicated staff with dedicated resources doing mobile outreach into the communities. We were able to identify individuals living rough and unsheltered and connect with them, provide them life-sustaining supports, and when they choose to participate in our program, have ongoing supports with the aim of stabilizing them and connecting them with more secure supports. Our outreach is really intended to be a connection. So we are looking to build a more robust system that's more permanent given the success that we saw in the pilot project. So we have for many years provided place-based outreach in the form of community breakfast, which includes access to laundry and shower out of our shelter building downtown. We would like to have a separate standalone site to better accommodate the needs of individuals outside of our shelter setting. And then we want to have a more permanent mobile outreach, including street outreach into communities such as Wolfville. And we're currently seeking funding to allow us to provide those services to communities. I think that's where I'll leave it and maybe pass it. I can either answer any questions you might have, or I can pass it on to Allison.
Do we want to wait till Allison's done her presentation and then we'll do that? So you can go ahead, Allison.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back today. And thanks, Leanne, for your presentation. Do we have some slides in the bottom of the, you may just. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'm here today in my capacity as the Coordinated Access Manager for the Annapolis Valley. I was hired by the CMHA in February of 2023, and I've been working for 2 years to help get this system in place. In my capacity as the manager, I build relationships with community entities and with community partners across the valley to ensure that we have a robust system of care and opportunities for folks who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. If we could just scroll down to the next. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. Excellent. Okay. I don't know how to make it smaller. On the right. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. So this is a vision statement that we collectively agreed on with our partners. So we envision a community where homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring. A coordinated access is a system that community agencies use to support people experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. This is a little bit of information about how the coordinated system came to be. So Reaching Home was introduced by the Canadian government as a homelessness strategy, and it aims to reduce homelessness by 50% by 2028. We follow these directives closely, and they guide our goals that we work on every month with our partners in monthly meetings. Coordinated access is a way for communities to bring consistency, equity, and efficiency to the process by which people are experiencing or at risk of homelessness, access to services, and housing-related resources. CMHA Nova Scotia Division is funded through the my position and other positions are funded through the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia. So this is a little bit of a graphic that shows the requirements of the system that we're working within and we're working to implement. I'm very, very blessed to have partnerships with the community in all sort of realms. So we've got community partners right straight across the valley from Digby to West Hants. I'm very incredibly lucky to have a partnership with Leanne and Nick here today. They offer the only 24-hour shelter, as Leanne said. And they're very client focused. They're very individual focused. They work very closely on action plans for individuals who access their services. And they are trauma informed. And that means that folks who are accessing these services are getting the care that they need and being met where they're at. So if they're ready to move forward with a plan, then they move forward. This isn't in any particular order, these pieces here, but I'll go through them just around the circle. So the system map and resources inventory. So this is a piece of coordinated access where we're building a map similar to the one that Town of Wolfville has, where you see the icons and you can determine based on what the icon is, what services are available to people who are in need. So for instance, if you met somebody in Wolfville who was experiencing homelessness, you could guide them to a website or you can give them a physical map and it'll show them what's open on that day to be able to access the services that they need. So if that's food, shelter, we know that these things kind of, in some respects, will change throughout the year. So some things may be based on funding, other things may be temporary. So there's a lot of considerations when somebody's accessing the system. It makes it extremely complicated. We're trying to make sure that this system is easy to access and very reliable. So service navigation and case conferencing, when somebody is coming into an access point and they're accessing services, the access point is the very first place that they would come. At that point, the individual would be seeking services, or they might just be wanting to find out more about services. So they would meet at an access point, somebody who is trauma-informed, trained professional, who would sit down and navigate their experience with them and talk more about what options are available to them. In this respect, it's meant to simplify the process. We don't want to overload somebody with information that's not relevant to their case. Very often when people are experiencing homelessness, they go into survival mode, and oftentimes I'm finding that they're not able to retain the amount of information that is available to folks. And so it's very, very easy to come into an access point, sit down with somebody, hear their story, listen to them, and then offer them services based on what their needs are. Another piece to this is we communicate, part of our partnerships is we communicate with people with lived experience. So we actually held a focus group where we sat down with folks, we paid them for their input and had them deliver their experiences and give input on what their barriers are to accessing services. So this is developing in collaboration with those voices, with First Voice. An initial triage. So once somebody accesses the system, they're asked a series of 13 questions. These 13 questions get to sort of the crux of what it is that they're needing at the moment. And then we can, if they're open to it, we can do an in-depth assessment. The assessment that I'm currently using is the vulnerability assessment tool. The vulnerability assessment tool is a trauma-informed 45-minute interview where you sit down with the individual and ask them a series of open-ended questions. They're not check boxes. They're very evidence-based, research-oriented questions that get the individual to think about the things that they've experienced in a way that allows us to pull that information in and really get at what the crux of the situation is. This tool has been incredibly helpful in terms of kind of untangling all of the intricacies of somebody's experience. So at the end of it, people will come out with a score that spans across 10 domains. And so we're assessing things like their basic needs, their ability to survive, so their survival skills, their medical needs, their mental health needs, their experience with homelessness, and a few others. So there's 10 domains that individuals would be asking or answering questions. Once we have that assessment, vacancy and matching and prioritization is happening. And this could be, the assessment doesn't need to be done in order for this to happen. And so it sometimes happens before, it sometimes happens after. And then there's also the option the client may not want to sit down for an interview. So it's entirely up to them. Vacancy matching and prioritization is done with a matrix that is developing. And so we have limited resources at the moment in terms of what people's options are. We work very closely with the the Nova Scotia Provincial Housing Authority, and they have their own prioritization component. And so they have a priority access form where when somebody is connected to housing support services, a housing support worker can sign off on their prioritization form. And that helps them sort of jump the line to ensure that they're housed in an equitable manner. Generally speaking, they're looking at people who have been chronically unhoused. And in my experience with this process, as it's very new, they've been doing a very good job at getting vacancies filled. Just in the last month, in October, we had 10 people housed. So I was extremely happy to hear that. The case conferencing is another piece to this, and I think we'll go through this in a little bit. So our current approach right now is somebody who's facing homelessness or at risk of homelessness is overwhelmed, to say the least. So they're going into this with a survival brain. They're thinking, I have all of these things that I need to do. There's so many people giving me advice. Where do I go first? Maybe they don't know how to use the internet. Maybe they're having barriers where somebody is taking advantage of them, or their money is compromised, like their income is compromised. So all of these decisions are extremely difficult to make in these situations. So what we're trying to do is break down the silos in our communication among partners to make this coordinated system work in a way that's streamlined. So the client will visit the access point. They're going to speak directly with the coordinated access staff. They're going to do the short intake. They're going to be assessed if they choose to. Then they're added to a by names list. So this by names list is a key component to the coordinated access system. It collects information on an individual level, so from each of the individuals who are accessing help. it collects information like how long have they been experiencing homelessness, where exactly are they staying at the moment, what their age is, how many children are staying with them at the moment, whether or not they have pets to take care of, or if they're caregivers, those kinds of things. So it's very in-depth information gathering. It also produces aggregate data. So at the end of all of this, every month I deliver information to the province and to the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia, and they can see sort of what the flow of homelessness looks like. So it's not going to look the same at the beginning of the month as it does at the end of the month. And our aim is to get, 3 or 4 people in the center of this. So we've got people coming in, they're staying for a short while in the system, maybe in emergency or transitional housing, and then hopefully they're being moved on. When they're connected with a housing support worker, which happens during this process after intake, once they're connected with a housing support worker, those housing support workers work very intensely with the individual, not for the individual. And I want to emphasize that. They're non-imposing. They do not tell an individual what they can or cannot do. They work with this individual to ensure that they're making decisions with them about the next steps. So they come up with action plans, they go through a process with them, and then they follow through by helping them maintain their housing. So they'll go in, ask them what some of their barriers are, they'll do a little bit of an assessment, and they might, for instance, help them apply for a subsidy if their rent is too high. They might guide them to some resources on parenting classes or things like that if they identify that those are some things that they need. If a client is experiencing chronic homelessness, or if they're experiencing extraordinary barriers to housing, this is where case conferencing comes into play. And so together as partners, as a community, we identify who are the individuals who are most in need. We go through them each individually at each case conferencing table. These happen bi-weekly. And we identify an action plan. So at the end of this case conferencing, we come out with an action plan where there's very clear steps so that the individual is able to knock down some of those barriers. We went through the by name list, but that's just what it looks like on my end. So you get a unique identifier, a first name and a last name, the contact, the assessment, whether or not they chose to do an assessment. So that's what it looks like on our end, and the province will get demographic information as well. So if it's families who are experiencing homelessness, or if there's a population of veterans who are experiencing homelessness, they'll get that as well. So as you know, I've been using the access point, or sorry, the Visitor Information Center as an access point. This is a pilot program, and I'm very, very grateful to Lindsay and Nick who have given me the opportunity to set this up. I'm learning what's most effective in these cases, and I've had a lot of input from concerned community members who are doing their best to ensure that these folks are safe here in Wolfville. So the first 2 days were a bust. I ended up staying at the Visitor Information Center and didn't see a single person. Then I started talking with folks, people who are concerned, people who know these individuals. And so it was brought to light that, my posters were a little technical, and maybe there were some other places that I could put them. Maybe we needed a broader net. And And so we discussed all of this and we decided on a few changes that we would make going forward. So I'm hoping to extend those hours. One of the things that was mentioned to us was that sometimes the showers are accessed later at night. And so that might be a change that we make. So instead of using the Visitor Information Center, or on top of using the Visitor Information Center in the morning on Mondays, maybe add a few nighttime hours as well. So the Visitor Information Center is being used as a physical location. It has trained staff. I have assist training. They'll be doing an intake if they choose, and their immediate needs will be addressed. So if they're in need of emergency services or supplies, we have first aid, there's toiletries on site, there's coffee and things like that if they need it. I want to emphasize as well that this is all very relational based. This work is very close to my heart, and it is incredibly important that we build relationships with individuals facing homelessness. So it does take a little bit more time than just kind of guiding somebody gently through a system. So these are the benefits that we've experienced through the access point. So we have, in other areas as well where coordinated access is implemented, this is what they see as beneficial. So there's a direct impact on reducing homelessness and housing instability in the community. It helps enhance community collaboration to reduce working in silos. There's opportunities to engage with vulnerable populations and increase organizational reach. We're straight across the valley. Very often I was finding that in the beginning, before we started having coordinated access, it was sort of one community was being left out and another community. So we're bringing people all to the table to make sure that everybody's involved. And it eases workloads because we're not duplicating services. So when we're all working together and we're all collaborating on this, it helps to ensure that, you know, if Leanne's housing support workers are doing something for somebody, that somebody else's housing support workers are not doing the exact same thing. So it helps to eliminate that duplication. I believe that's the end of it. So so these are some things that we've been thinking about in terms of coordinated access. So do we serve all people with no limitations, and who might access these services in terms of the access points? Do the staff have time to do short intakes? Are we open regular hours with limited unexpected closures? And do we have the capacity to be a consistent, safe, and welcoming presence within the community? I'm finding, especially with nonprofits, that things dependent on funding can be tricky. Sometimes they're, there 1 year and then they're not the next, and that can be very difficult for folks experiencing homelessness. So there are some things that we work through, but we're working together to make sure that this system is working for individuals. And my big ask of you is to ensure that when you're addressing these needs, that you recognize the systems already in place to be able to help them, and so to guide them to an access point or to the shelter. And just be consistent in your messaging, I think, too. Did you want to say anything else?
Well, maybe just clarify that the shelter is an access point.
Yes, we've had access points where people can get connected to housing support workers. So those access points are Open Arms Oasis, Kentville Town Center at 10 Webster Street. The West Hants Family Resource Center is another partner. The Portal for youth who are experiencing homelessness, and the Kids Action Program with the BCLA is also a partner. Once we kind of assess how these access points are working, we're hoping to ensure that they are implemented across the valley. So right from Digby to West Hants. I've been talking with folks from each end of that spectrum or geographic area to ensure that we have those resources available. Did you want to add anything? No. So thank you. I'll open it to questions, I think.
Thank you, Allison and Leanne, for both of those. It's a very complex issue, so thank you. I'm going to open the floor now for any questions council may have. Councillor Williams.
How willing are the
Sorry, Councillor Williams, can I ask you to come closer to your mic?
How willing are the handful of people in Wolfville in accessing these services?
Yeah, so I can't speak to specifics just because we have a very important confidentiality piece to ensure that folks' information is maintained. But I will say that the access point in the last day that I was working there, I did see more visitors. So I'm really hopeful that, we can get things rolling and ensure that they get connected to supports as well. So does that answer your question? Sorry. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Van Niekerk.
I was just going to add.
I'm sorry.
One quick point, that our outreach staff have connected with many of the individuals that are experiencing unsheltered homelessness in the community of Wolfville. And we have made individuals aware of the resources available to them.
I just had some questions about how the VIC was chosen as the connected access destination for Wolfville.
For an access point to work, it needs to be local. It needs to be known to individuals. And the Visitor Information Center actually has showers there as well. And so it seemed like an ideal space to, so for us, it's central. People know where it is, and it was sort of an easy to set up.
Were there any other locations considered?
The library, yeah.
Sorry, I'll just add that the Visitor Information Center is also vacant and unused on the Monday that Coordinated Access is using.
So it's closed normally on
Closed,
Tuesday?
yeah, so it's being used for that purpose.
Councillor Elliott.
I probably know too much. I know about the silos. I know that I'm thrilled that there's now coordination happening. There's a group of us who have been working since January trying to make a difference, and it's very, very complicated, as everybody says. This housing is a provincial responsibility, but housing is also a human right. So we try to make a difference, and it's so challenging, especially, with individuals who might be mentally ill. There are no facilities to assist them. Going to a shelter where you're in a dormitory situation would be hugely challenging. So I guess my question is, I've heard that the provinces instituted some rent supplements, which might be a factor in helping some of our people out of the tents, but that there were only 15 offered. Is that the case, and who are they for?
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Haddock. I'm the housing and outreach manager, different job, for Open Arms. I believe what you're speaking to, Wendy, is the pilot project or the pilot housing program that the Department of Community Services has launched in conjunction with Open Arms. And it's our intensive case management program that provides direct program subsidy for individuals in Kings County experiencing chronic homelessness. that was a limited place program with a 15 participant cap put on it to show efficacy and to develop the program so it can be launched and expanded provincially through our partners in Department of Community Service. To my understanding, it is the most robust, well-funded, and well-resourced housing program in the province. And it's available to all the individuals in Kings County experiencing chronic homelessness.
Tell me, Nick, how many are there?
There are 15 placements.
No, experiencing homelessness.
Well,
Is it
that's-
100, 200?
That's more of a question for Allison at this point in time. She finds them, I house them.
Okay, so the by name list is a comprehensive, not comprehensive, sorry. I want to emphasize that it is not a comprehensive list of all individuals experiencing homelessness across the valley, and currently there are 169 people on this list. That's a huge underestimate, and I see Wendy's shaking her head. This is because folks have experience with systems that makes them, scared to reach out for help. It's about relationship building and people getting to know what this new system is about and how it can help them. There's a lot of systems trauma in our community, and rural homelessness, especially in the Annapolis Valley, is we deal with a very, very unique population. So, yeah, there are going to be more people added soon. Yeah, and there's also, we should know as well, there's a homelessness count. So there's an agency-based homelessness count that is happening this month. Service providers are, as they interact, yes. So Mary Sweetman with Acadia University and Homeless No More, they're performing this. They did it 2 years. I think Lindsay was the one who started it, and so she did the first one, and then there was another one, and then this is the third one, I believe. Yeah, and so that gives us numbers to bring forward to show people what the situation is in its entirety. Well, not in its entirety, because it doesn't actually capture the people who are hiding and succumb to hidden homelessness. So. Any more questions? No.
So once council has gone through their questions, again, I'll suggest we'll request a motion to move in camera so we can share some additional information. So that'll be on the docket once council's satisfied with it.
Mayor McKay?
You said there was 15 that were handed out. So I'll assume that was a pilot because you said it was kind of to measure what would happen. So, and you said more to come soon. So what does that mean in real life?
So within that, there are 15 program placements. The program is an intensive case management or intentional case management program that will follow individuals experiencing chronic homelessness for 2 years. That includes helping them locate housing, obtain housing through the lease process signing, and providing ongoing in-home support to help them connect with their community, their healthcare, and all that until such point in time that they're stable in their housing, no longer requiring supports. All I know as far as where that program's going is the Darton's looking extremely closely at the efficacy of the program, the fidelity of its outcomes, and whether or not that can be launched to other areas of the province. But we're the only county that actually has that service right now. So as much as coming is what we have. Caseload ratios, like specifically to that program, Jody? I think that program's at about 50% capacity and has been up and running for about 6 weeks.
So there's room for more. And then that's going to come from Allison to you.
Exactly. She's going to help us identify the ones that are going to best need that program that's above and beyond what existing services provide. Those that intensive case management programs are the catch at the bottom. They ensure that nobody falls through the cracks. We're the ones that serve everyone exclusively regardless of barriers.
And there was a statement made about being a partner in affordable housing coming soon. So what does that, being property managers of affordable housing coming soon? I'm not sure if you're at liberty to say what that is, but if you can.
Yes. So I'm not able to provide any details, but it involves Open Arms acquiring existing and building new units that are dedicated as affordable housing forever. And we would be the owners and operators of that housing.
Okay. That's great. My last question, if I can. Have you been in touch? There is a local group that I think we all received it via email. Let's see if I get the acronym correctly. WAKE, Wolfville and Area Interchurch Council. Thank you. For funding of, I think it was $250,000. 200, sorry. Have you been in contact with them to do more outreach, provide housing subsidies, whatever that might entail?
I have had the opportunity to present at the ad hoc homelessness group in Wolfville, which I believe is has some members from Wake at that group. And I understand that Wake is going through a bit of a request for proposals process, which ends on November 18th, and we intend to submit a proposal to that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Are there any more questions? I have one, if that's okay, Mayor. As you both mentioned, there's already services in place to address the needs of people that are unhoused currently. What are the largest barriers for the people that are not currently using those? I know you can't speak specifically, but if you can just generally speak about that.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing now as we're having people more contact with people is that there's a need for mental health services. There's a need for more targeted housing. So for individuals who are experiencing complex needs, they might need supportive living arrangements or supportive housing. And affordability. Affordability is the big thing. We used to have access to deep subsidies, and I think that that's been talked about quite a lot. Deep subsidies are a huge help in regards to getting somebody housed in an appropriate and manageable living arrangement.
Another unique thing to consider with working with chronic homeless or individuals who have complex barriers to housing is ultimately it's very, very similar to providing first aid to an individual. Is we can go up and offer first aid, but they have the right to refuse. And to your point, one of those biggest barriers, and I think Allison alluded to this earlier, is systems level trauma, where they have engaged with the system of care before, and it's actually worked counterproductive for them and had an adverse effect. So the relationship piece, as Allison was talking about, we provide wraparound support to develop a relationship and a sense of community where the individuals are at, so that we can transfer that safe community to the systems of care that they've been unable to access because of a barrier and overcome those barriers so they can access them. That takes an extraordinary amount of time and a lot of relationship. And it's why having a coordinated system of care is so important, because individuals can both be supporting in one person, but if they're working towards competing goals or conflicting goals, it'll actually have the opposite effect of what we're doing. Is one will be saying to go and access a service while the other service providers encourage them to not, which inherently creates another systems level of trauma, because what they're being told, they're getting a different answer consistently on where they go, which is creates its own barrier to access supports.
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
I just want to see if I'm hearing you correctly. So are you telling us that you believe that the coordinated access is the best way to help individuals experiencing homelessness, chronic homelessness, who may have trauma from systems in the past, for your groups together to wrap around those individuals to find them assistance?
Yeah, everybody's individual case is different, but at the moment that this is the best source of help for them. So we'd encourage people to come access our services. Yes.
Just look around before we
Yeah, so if council would like to make a motion to go in camera, and just for our gallery as well, when council moves in camera, that'll be a closed session. So a few staff and presenters have been invited to stay for that session, but members of the gallery will be asked to leave during that closed session.
Move it now. Okay. Can I,
I
oh,
move
sorry,
that- I would move that we move into camera.
under the section 22? We
Right.
need to put that, okay. Public security and contract
yep, yep.
negotiations under that, under 22 to HE of the MGA.
I'll second that motion.
We're going to count them as yay votes.